Chapter 976, I'm not a busybody. The black youth got up from the bench and glared at Tang Xiu as he and the rest of his men pulled out their pistols. Right as they aimed the muzzles at Tang Xiu, however, Tang Guang's chilling voice sounded, "Put the gun down if you don't want to die here. I already told you that your gun is useless and is nothing but a toy in my eyes." "What fucking arrogance," shouted the black youth. A chilling light flashed in Tang Guang's eyes. The dagger in his hand instantly shot at the guy's wrist. As the fella's pistol fell to the floor, the delicate woman bounced up a few times and appeared in front of the 7 or so big men as the silver thread in her palm swept at them, directly cutting off their wrists that held their guns, causing their wrists to fall onto the floor along with their pistols. In that instant, all the smuggled people inside the cabin were stricken with panic, looking incredulously at Tang Guang and the delicate woman racing hearts. At the doorway of the cabin, the lean middle-aged man who constantly looked drowsy suddenly raised his head and indifferently said, "Go fucking outside if you want to shed blood here. I hate the smell of blood, though I don't mind the making of bloody scenes." Tang Xiu shot a look at the black guy and his men whining in pain. He shook his head and said, "Let's stop here and now since the snakehead boss already said that he doesn't like the smell of blood. And you, black dude. I don't care who you are and what background you have. Just carve in your mind that I'm not one who you can afford to provoke on this ship. Just behave if you still value your life." The black guy glared at Tang Xiu with visible hatred. He gritted his teeth and sat back on the bench. Despite everything, he couldn't cast away a deep fear in his heart toward Tang Xiu since he was well aware that each of his men was comparable to experts, who were able to contend with a group of average people. Yet, they didn't even have any chance to fight back at all when facing a single man and woman. They had been easily dealt with even after they had pulled their guns out. These people were experts and ones that were very powerful. The turn of events that evolved to this dramatic outcome was out of Zhuo Qing's expectation. The reason why she spoke out was because of her gratitude to Tang Xiu for giving her children candy and chocolate bars, while she also worried that he would be bullied by these men. However, it never came to her mind that the real ruthless man turned out to be this good-looking and kind-hearted young man. At this time, she secretly glanced at Tang Xiu, while Tang Xiu himself was keenly aware that she was peeking at him. He just let out a smile towards her and lightly said, "Thank you for the warning. It's fate that brought us to meet, which was the reason why I protected you and your children." "Thank you," said Zhuo Qing with gratitude. Previously, she had been worrying that the process of people smuggling was dangerous. And now, she had witnessed it personally, thus causing her worries to grow deeper, and she even feared that they would encounter an accident on the ship. But her restlessness subsided a lot after hearing Tang Xiu's words. Yet, she couldn't cast away the familiar feeling she had with Tang Xiu. She felt that she had seen him somewhere, and the thought kept popping up even though she couldn't remember where from. After a long while, she suddenly emboldened herself to look at Tang Xiu and asked, "Do you know someone named Zhuo Dequan?" "Zhuo Dequan? No, I don't know about him." Tang Xiu shook his head. A disappointed expression flashed in Zhuo Qing's eyes. Her father was once a very famous character in China and had extensive connections. If it wasn't because he had provoked a very powerful family, he wouldn't have fled from China and lived abroad while hiding their name. This time, her husband's family had been defeated while her husband died in a strange car accident. Being alone, helpless, and with no one to turn to, her only option was taking her 2 children back to her father overseas. However, so as to avoid being traced by their enemy while looking for her father abroad, she contacted a few close brothers of her father who could only take her 2 twin children to enter Saipan illegally. She had to leave Saipan on a smuggling ship to Thailand afterwards. Tang Guang, who had returned to Tang Xiu's side, looked a bit surprised and whispered, "I know about Zhuo Dequan and I once met him, boss. It's just I don't know whether he and the man she just mentioned are the same person." "You do?" asked Tang Xiu. "Who exactly is this Zhuo Dequan?" He was quite a famous character in the southern provinces some time ago, answered Tang Guang in a whisper. Although he didn't have a direct connection to the highest officials in the country, he was still considered a powerful figure. He's a businessman, a big one who practically can make money out of anything. But about a decade ago, he had to abandon most of his family's business and fled abroad because he offended the Huang family from the Fukang province. The Huang family? A smile appeared on Tang Xiu's as he inquired again, do you know the cause of the conflict? That I don't know, but Sis Xiaxue definitely knows about it, answered Tang Guang. Tang Xiu took out his cell phone before remembering that he was at sea right now with no signal. Then, he stood up to walk to Zhuo Qing's side. After sitting cross-legged, he took out 2 bars of chocolate and handed them over to her as he looked at Zhuo Qing and said, well, I got nothing to do anyway, so tell me what happened between your old man with the Huang family. The statement made Zhuo Qing's expression enormously changed. She quickly hugged her 2 sons with fear in her eyes, saying, you just said that you never heard of Zhuo Dequan? How did you know the matter between him and the Huang? I have never heard of him, but my subordinate knows something about it, said Tang Xiu with a smile. Zhuo Qing shot a look at Tang Guang and asked with hesitation, who exactly are you? Are you someone working for the Huang family? Please don't misunderstand me. Tang Xiu waved and said, I'm not one of them. The answer made Zhuo Qing relaxed, but still very vigilant. You haven't answered my first question. Who are you? Well, let me introduce myself then. Tang Xiu smiled and answered, I'm Tang Xiu, that's the Tang character of the Tang dynasty, and Xiu meaning cultivating. What's yours? My name is Zhuo Qing, replied Zhuo Qing. The instant after, a thought suddenly flashed in her mind and a look of disbelief quickly appeared on her face as she exclaimed, I remember you. You're the young divine Dr. Tang Xiu. Tang Xiu couldn't help but chuckle and said, I never thought that I was so famous. To think that I would meet people on a smuggling sea amid the vast ocean that turn out to recognize me. The moment Zhuo Qing recognized Tang Xiu, most of the fear in her heart instantly dissipated. Although it was her first time meeting Tang Xiu in person, she had long heard the resounding reputation of the young divine doctor. Most importantly, all the reports about him were positive. Thus, she concluded that this young man must be a good person. Are these little guys your sons? Asked Tang Xiu with a smile. They are cute twin brothers. Yeah, they are my sons. Zhuo Qing nodded with a bitter face. Accidents befell my family, and only the 3 of us have survived. I didn't expect to meet you here, divine Dr. Tang. I often heard about your name before. It's all right. Tang Xiu waved and said, so, tell me about the matter between your father and the Huang. I think you should be very clear about the story from the beginning to end, no? You already guessed that Zhuo Dequan is my father, so I'll not hide it from you, whispered Zhuo Qing. It happened 10 years ago, I was less than 20 years old at the time. My father clashed with the Huang from the Fukang province over a business matter, which concluded in the defeat of my father after losing big in their battle. In a rage, my father sent his men to secretly attack Huang Jinfu, the younger brother of the current Huang family's patriarch, and severely wounded him. At first, my father thought that he could handle the Huang by relying on his own ability since they only had power. But it turned out that the Huang family's power far surpassed my father's calculations, thus leading to the deaths or crippling of many of his men, leading to the takeover of his business. If he hadn't have escaped quickly, he would have also lost his life by the Huang family's hands. Your father should have started his enterprise from the bottom up, right? Asked Tang Xiu suddenly. That's right. My father was once a poor man coming out of the countryside. Zhuo Qing nodded. Later on, he relied on his own abilities and amassed hundreds of millions in assets. It was the very reason that he gradually changed and was somewhat arrogant, which eventually led to him provoking people he shouldn't have. I see. Tang Xiu nodded and said, but this is just a grievance of the past. I think the Huang family should have forgotten the grudge by now. So, the reason why the three of you are sailing abroad now is to go back to see your father then? That's right. Jing nodded and said, my husband passed away after he got in a bizarre car accident, and his family's business went bankrupt all of a sudden. Although I don't have any evidence, I guess that it was because of the hands of the Huang family. Further, I'm afraid that I will become the next victim of the Huang's retaliation if I keep staying in the mainland, so my only option is to take my 2 children and flee overseas. The Huang are too ruthless. They just simply want none of us to survive. There's something that makes me curious, though, said Tang Xiu. The Huang knew that you're in China for more than a decade, so why didn't they retaliate against you earlier and only act now? That was because of my husband, answered Jing with a helpless face. He got drunk and then blabbered about our identity. Back then, I attended a boarding school since my father feared that I would become the target of those people who he had offended due to his business. He concealed my existence, so the Huang had been unable to find me until lately. Hey. It seems that the retribution for the bad deeds that were done by your father in the past now fall on you. Tang Xiu sighed as he understood the whole story. Anyway, you've already brought your 2 sons to live abroad, so live your life well. I'll try to call Huang Jinfu from the Huang family and hope that he won't pursue you anymore. You know the Huang family's patriarch, Huang Jinfu, asked Jing with a surprised face. Yeah, I know him. Tang Xiu nodded. The answer made Jing suddenly restless and nervous. Divine Dr. Tang, are you going to tell the Huang where the 3 of us are heading to? Seeing her anxious and worried face, Tang Xiu let out a light smile and said, don't worry. I rarely meddle in others' business. Besides, our meeting is preordained by fate and I have a good relationship with the Huang, so I might as well help you in passing. But keep mind to cast away any thoughts of enacting revenge in the future. Forget everything about their relation to the death of your husband or how your family went bankrupt. The Huang are not any average clan you can provoke, lest you stain your children's hearts with hatred. Chapter 977, Helping Out Till End. We're already content if we can live safely. How can we even have the thought of revenge, said Jing with a bitter expression. All I can ask is to have the hatred of the Huang family to go away and no longer trouble us. Tang Xiu then looked at the cabin entrance and asked aloud, hey, snakehead boss. How long does it take to get a signal for a cell phone? The middle-aged man glanced at him and answered, we'll reach the Midway Island for you to change ship in 4 hours. Only then will you be able to receive a cell signal. However, none of you are allowed to make a phone call. How about letting me make a phone call, or simply letting me slaughter all of you, asked Tang Xiu lightly. It's your call, though. The man's eyes narrowed, and he shot a deep look at Tang Xiu for a long time before he silently nodded and spoke out. Your men are very strong, and we don't want trouble. But keep in mind that we are never to see each other again once you leave this ship. You've got my word. Tang Xiu nodded. Time passed by and noon of the next day of the journey quickly came in the blink of an eye. After a day of sailing, the cargo ship smoothly arrived in Manila. Now with a signal, Tang Xiu dialed the phone number of Huang Jinfu, the Huang family's head, in front of Jing. Hello, Mr. Tang, a pleasantly surprised voice belonging to Huang Jinfu came out of the phone. Have you been well, family head Huang? Asked Tang Xiu with a smile. It's not bad, thanks. Huang Jinfu replied with a happy voice, well, is there anything I can do for you since you've contacted me, Mr. Tang? Yeah, I'd like to ask a favor from you, said Tang Xiu with a smile. Please tell me directly, Mr. Tang. As long as it's within my means, or what the Huang can achieve, we'll definitely try our best, replied Huang Jinfu hurriedly. It's about Daquan, you should know about him, said Tang Xiu. I and his daughter, Jing, have a bit of a relationship, so I learned about the animosity between you both and I want to be the peacemaker. Anyway, the grudge from the past has been kept far too long, right, Huang Jinfu? Can you consider letting it go? The question made Huang Jinfu fall into silence for a while before his wry voice replied back, "If it is your wish, then my family will pursue it no longer, Mr. Tang. Though I'm afraid that I can't suppress my younger brother on this matter. As I heard it, your younger brother was injured in the past." "How's his condition now?" asked Tang Xiu. "He stayed in bed for more than a decade, and is said to be crippled for the rest of his life," answered Huang Jinfu with a bitter voice. "If it wasn't for the great effort by my family to sustain his life with medication, he wouldn't have been able to survive. Anyway, I'm currently overseas, but I'll find time to visit your younger brother once I return," said Tang Xiu. "I'll deal with his disability problem. If you can cure my younger brother." No. I talked too much. "With Mr. Tang's great medical skills, I don't think any symptoms are outside of your ability," said Huang Jinfu excitedly. "I'll prepare lavish gifts for you after you return to the mainland and visit my younger brother's home. I'll visit for his treatment, but there's no need for any gifts." "Well, there's nothing else to speak about, so see you later." Tang Xiu directly hung up after he said that. He had his phone on speakerphone while talking with Huang Jinfu, so Zhuqing was able to hear the conversation. At this moment, despite the shock she had due to Tang Xiu's ability to make the head of the Huang family of Fukang province act so respectful, the most intense feeling she had was the joy that the Huang would write off their grudge over the years, and would no longer send their men to pursue her family. "Thank you, Divine Dr. Tang." "Thank you," said Zhuqing wholeheartedly. "Never mind it. It's just a minor matter and easy to deal with." Tang Xiu waved and said, "Let's go outside. We're going to change the ship for the journey ahead." Zhuqing grabbed the two children's hands and followed Tang Xiu to board another cargo ship. Just as she sat on the cabin, she asked, "Do you mind giving me your number, Divine Dr. Tang? Although my father fled to Thailand many years ago, he has developed a business again from scratch after many years. You've enormously helped us, and I'm sure that he'll be very grateful to you as well. Also, if you have no place to stay at in Thailand, you can stay at my father's manor. I guarantee you that it has a very good environment there." "A manor? What business does your father do in Thailand now, though?" asked Tang Xiu curiously. "He has a lot of businesses, but he lives at a coconut plantation now," answered Zhuqing with a smile. "It's August now, the ripening season for coconut. If you come with me there, you can taste the most delicious coconut meat and milk." "Is it located in Bangkok?" asked Tang Xiu. "It's in the Bangkok suburbs, about an hour's drive from downtown," answered Zhuqing. Tang Xiu gave it some thought for a short time before nodding. "If so, then I will bother you with a visit. But there's a very important matter I need to deal with in Thailand this time, so the whereabouts of me and my men must be kept a secret." "I understand that. You wouldn't have boarded a smuggling ship otherwise, given your identity." Zhuqing nodded and said, "Well, I'll call my father after the ship is docked so he can send his men to pick us up." "You give something to others, and you'll get something else in return," commented Tang Xiu smilingly. "The line seems to hold true. I didn't expect to earn myself some temporary lodging due to helping others on a whim." Zhuqing chuckled and said, "You're hailed as a young divine doctor in China, a figure respected by tens of thousands of people. It should be our pleasure and honor for being able to help you. Let's spare the pleasantries. We're setting sail soon, so take your time to quickly have a meal and rest well." Tang Xiu waved and said, "Nobody knows what's going to happen next, but the most important thing is to keep your spirit in the best condition possible." On the long river that divided the land, more than 100 kilometers away from downtown Bangkok was a suburb with large plantations and estates, belonging to many wealthy landowners. In a large manor estate in a strategic location with convenient transportation, Zhu Dequan, who was wearing a flowery coat and a necklace with an ivory pendant, was standing by the pool before a multi-storied building, a look of worry evident on his square face. "We still have no news, boss," reported a stalwart youth that came striding from the distance. Huya and Shizi still haven't sent any news either, asked Sui Dequan with knitted brows. Do you mean the journey arranged by Snakehead to smuggle them has been compromised? Something came up and Feifei has met with a mishap, said the young man with a bitter face. He seems to have offended a powerful clan and got dumped into the sea. We lost contact with him and we were unable to get in touch with Snakehead at the midway point either. However, both Huya and Shizi have mobilized men to find the young lady's traces. Worry not, boss. I'll inform you immediately once we find their trace. Are you all so fucking trash that can't even get things done? Growled Sui Dequan angrily. Just remember that if my daughter and 2 grandsons encounter any danger, you will bear all the consequences. Understood, nodded the youth quickly. Taking out a cigar, Sui Dequan lit it up and took a deep puff twice before sighing. That child little Jing has never enjoyed a happy life with me. She spent her early life in a boarding school and sometimes was only able to see me every 6 months. Right as she grew up, I offended someone and escaped from the mainland. When I saw her life finally stabilize, I never thought that what I had done would catch up with her. The damn Huang family. I'd have already returned to the mainland and exterminated them if I had the ability to do so. The Huang have a deep foundation, as well as a lot of experts working for them, said the young man hurriedly. Just limiting ourselves from their investigation is already a very tall order, so please cast away any thoughts of revenge, boss. Blame me for being very impulsive in the past, causing me to clash against the Huang clansmen directly. It's just that they have never let me go even after I fled overseas, said Sui Dequan with a helpless face. Do you think I don't know how powerful the Huang is? They are determined to get us and don't want to drop this matter at all. The youth fell into silence as he was aware that Sui Dequan was speaking the truth. His boss would have already let go of the grudge and would bury the hatchet if he could, yet the fact of the matter was that the younger brother of Huang Jingfu, the head of the Huang family, ended up with a lifelong disability. Him being alive until now was already a miracle in of itself. Even if they wanted to cast away the animosity, the Huang probably wouldn't let it go just like that. Forget it. I've done my best for any means to defend against them regardless. Sui Dequan waved with an irritated expression, saying, the Huang are very powerful in the Fukang province, and they have quite the power in China. But I don't believe that they can extend their hands in Thailand and Bangkok. Just continue tracking the whereabouts of Jing. Be ready to go and send reinforcements once you find her. Affirmative, replied the youth as he turned and walked away. Sui Dequan kept smoking the cigar while standing by the pool and silently praying, nothing must happen to you and your 2 sons, Jing. Else, in the future, I will only live my life in pain. As the next day came, a cargo ship docked on the shore near the Chao Phraya River. A few stealthy men came ashore and had a talk with the port official and, quickly after, the 40-plus smuggled people on the ship left in a hurry. Tang Xiu didn't allow Zui Qing to contact her father, but instead ordered Tang Guang to catch some taxis to head toward the address Zui Qing told him. We got company tailing us, boss, whispered Tang Guang all of a sudden. Tang Xiu instantly released his spiritual sense. There was indeed a black SUV trailing behind them. Further, some of the men in the car were the black youth's subordinates who were also passengers on the smuggler ship. Deal with them, in. With his perception, it was easy for Tang Xiu to find Tang An who had been on the car's roof this whole time to give the order to. Crash. A loud crashing sound was heard, and the black SUV behind them suddenly overturned and crashed into the store on the side of the street, causing several men in the car to be seriously injured. Less than 2 hours later, 3 taxis then stopped before the gate of a manor. 4 security guards in black uniforms then quickly came out with batons in their hands as Tang Xiu and the rest got out from the cabs. Who are you? Asked a man in Thai. Zui Qing was apparently very fluent in Thai, so she paced forward while holding the hands of her 2 sons, saying, I'm Zui Qing. Sui Dequan is my father. I need to trouble you with notifying him that I've come with my 2 sons. You're the young lady, exclaimed the security guard with a bright smile and lit up eyes. Chapter 978, Profiting from Others' Ill Luck. In the spacious and bright room, Swadequan continued smoking his cigar while quietly reading the financial statement in his hand. His business had been in trouble as of late, which involved a particular case that was his gold mine. The gold sand had been mined, smelted and refined, yet the gold price plummeted, thus leading to abysmal sales. It made him depressed since he was in dire need of cash. "Boss, Kanaja just sent someone to give another reminder again." A middle-aged man whose appearance was far from looking handsome, though with eyes full of wisdom and experience, walked inside with a briefcase and reported with a helpless expression. "What the fuck? When it rains, it fucking pours, and now another shit comes hitting with another headache?" Swadequan slapped the table furiously. "It's only 6 days until I have to pay back the money we owe him. How can we have the price of gold bounce back again? How come we haven't had any big buyer within 6 days? Kanaja told us that he agrees with us paying our debt with gold. But he said the arrears must be paid according to the current gold price on the market," said the middle-aged with a bitter smile. "He's just fucking robbing the house while it burns." Swadequan furiously shouted. "He's indeed taking advantage of our ill fortune," said the middle-aged man. "But we have no other option than to pay the arrears with gold. We practically have no liquidity left in other businesses we can use, while we also need 80 million more to fully pay the debt." The cloudy expression on Swadequan's face turned grim. He dared not default on his debt to Kanaja since he knew who this man was. If he were to offend this man, he would end up far worse than when he offended the Huang. Although the latter had been hunting him and destroyed many of his businesses, they still didn't dare to act to the extreme due to the legal restraints in China. But Kanaja was a different breed of man who had great influence and power in Bangkok, a ruthless man who could paint anything black or white on a whim. He was known as a lunatic who would utterly destroy someone for the sake of profits. Ring, ring, ring. The cell phone on the table suddenly rang. Swadequan took a deep breath and directly picked up the call, asking in a heavy voice, "What is it?" "The young lady is here, boss." The voice of the estate's security captain came out of the mobile phone. Swadequan looked vacant for a moment before a look of joy covered his face. Although he needed to resolve the debt with Kanaja, the most important thing in his mind was the matter with his daughter and his 2 grandsons. He couldn't care less about paying his debt with gold regardless of its plummeted price as long as they could come here safe and sound. "Take and escort her here immediately. I'll be waiting." As he hung up, Swadequan looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Tell Kanaja that I'll definitely pay back his money within 6 days. Tell him that he'll get the gold if we don't have cash by then." Having said that, he hurriedly ran outside with eagerness and loudly yelled unceasingly, mobilizing his men nearby to prepare the grand welcome for his daughter. After 6+ minutes, for cars parked in a small square outside the courtyard of the multi-storied building, Swadequan quickly ran with an overjoyed expression the moment he saw Ching and his 2 grandsons, hugging her and saying, "I'm really glad you've come here safe and sound, Jing. It's been hard on you. Blame me for being a useless father, causing you to be in so many hardships and pains." Ching hadn't seen her father for more than 6 years. All the restlessness she had all this time finally disappeared after the hug. With a constant flow of tears, she sobbed and whimpered, "I never blamed you, Dad." Swadequan released his hug and shook his head. He then looked at the 2 boys beside his daughter and immediately squatted down. "You're Yangyang and Daodu, right? It's our first time seeing each other after you were born. Blame your grandpa for being incompetent." "Yangyang, Daodu, quickly greet your grandfather," said Ching hurriedly. The 2 sensible boys greeted, "Hello, Grandpa." With a face full of joy, Swadequan nodded to them. He grabbed their small hands and said, "Good children. You both are good children. Let's walk. Grandpa has told the maids to prepare delicious meals for you. Jing, the journey must have been very hard on you. Take a hot bath and rest well. We did encounter a lot of trouble on the journey into this country illegally, said Jing. We are here because of Divine Dr. Tang, who has been protecting us all the way here. Let me introduce you to him. This is Divine Dr. Tang, and the rest are his men and his friends. Only at this moment did Zhuo Dequan notice a group of people behind his daughter. He suddenly frowned and glanced at the crowd. Then, he walked to Tang Xiu's front and amiably stretched out his hand. Hello, Divine Dr. Tang. I'm Zhuo Dequan. I'm very grateful to you for helping my daughter. I just happened to run into her. I just did whatever I could do. Tang Xiu smiled lightly and said, There's no need for such courtesy, Boss Zhuo. Eyes lit up, Zhuo Dequan then smilingly said, In any case, you've helped my daughter, so you're our friend. Please walk with me and have a chat inside. Divine Dr. Tang not only has helped me, Dad. He has helped you too, interjected Jing. Zhuo Dequan stared blankly and asked with a puzzled face, He has helped me too. What are you talking about? Divine Dr. Tang has a close relationship with the Huang family's head, Huang Jinfu, Dad, explained Jing. I told him that you have a grudge against the Huang family from the Fukang province when we're at sea, so he called Huang Jinfu. I also listened to their conversation, and Huang Jinfu personally promised that all their grudges with you have been written off. The smile on Zhuo Dequan's face instantly vanished, replaced with a bit of vigilance and murderous intent. He shot a deep look at Tang Xiu and asked, Divine Dr. Tang, may I know your other honorable identities? I'm not harboring any hostility toward you, Boss Zhuo. You don't need to guard against me, said Tang Xiu smilingly. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tang Xiu, and I'm known as the young divine doctor of the Star City Chinese Medical Hospital in China. Certainly, as you've guessed it, I also have another identity which is a businessman like you. May I know about the business Mr. Tang runs? Asked Zhuo Dequan again. The Magnificent Tang Corporation, answered Tang Xiu. The answer made Zhuo Dequan's heart skip a beat instantly. Then, he said in a cautious manner, I've heard of the Magnificent Tang Corp, which has been touted as a dark horse in the business community in China. The company mainly produces cosmetics, health products, wine, among businesses, whereas its general manager, Kong Xia, was once Wall Street's finance genius in the US. Are you really? That's correct. I'm the owner of the Magnificent Tang Corporation, and Kong Xia is working for me, answered Tang Xiu with a smile. A wave of dread flooded Zhuo Dequan's heart, for he never imagined that the big boss of the Magnificent Tang Corporation would appear before him one day. Yet, the more bizarre thing was that he had also illegally entered Thailand and came to Bangkok along with his daughter. Something is wrong. Zhuo Dequan's heart skipped a beat yet again. It was because Tang Xiu had an extraordinary identity, and it was absolutely easy for him to come to Bangkok. There was no need for him to smuggle himself into this country whatsoever. Mr. Tang, for you to secretly come to Bangkok all of a sudden should be because of a very confidential matter, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be a problem for you to enter this country openly given your identity otherwise, said Zhuo Dequan with a very low voice. Even the authorities and business people in Bangkok would regard you as an honorable guest. I do have a confidential matter I need to deal with here in secrecy. Tang Xiu nodded and said, I wouldn't have run into your daughter on my journey here otherwise. Of course, we can leave your place if you're afraid that we'll bring about troublesome matters to you. Countless thoughts flashed in Zhuo Dequan's mind before he finally let out a faint smile and said, You came here as a guest, Mr. Tang. As a host, it's a duty of mine to entertain you with hospitality. But if Mr. Tang and everyone else still have things to tend to, then I won't be adamant for you staying here either. What are you talking about, Dad? Zhuo Qing quickly interjected after hearing her father's words. Divine Dr. Tang has not only helped me, but he also has helped you. They just arrived in Thailand and are not familiar with places here. Why don't you let him stay here? Besides, we don't have many guests occupying the guest rooms here anyway. Her rebuke made Zhuo Dequan's face sink. He glared at Zhuo Qing and said, "The reason why Mr. Tang came to Thailand is due to a very important issue he has to deal with, so how can they stay here for a long time? All right, take your children for a bath and change to clean clothes. I'll send someone to call you up after the meals have been prepared." Zhuo Qing opened her mouth and wanted to argue again. Boss Zhuo is correct. Tang Xiu raised his hand to interrupt her and smilingly said, "We do have some matters to attend. Miss Zhuo, we've accomplished our duty since you've already arrived here, there's no need for further hospitality. We shall take our leave as there are things we need to tend to." Zhuo Qing hurriedly said, "You can't go, Divine Dr. Tang." Zhuo Dequan reached out to grab her and shouted, "How can you be so ignorant, Qing? Divine Dr. Tang has an important matter to tend to and naturally can't waste his time. I'll welcome them here once they're done with their business." Tang Xiu just let out a faint smile and nodded to Zhuo Qing. Then, he led his group back to the LSV cars and left the manor at the escort of 4 security guards. With a face turned pale due to anger, Zhuo Qing angrily called out, "Why did you do that, father? Why did you shut our door and force them to leave? Divine Dr. Tang has helped me and you. You also know how honored his identity is in the mainland. Numerous people have tried to invite him to their home, yet he rarely accepts their invitations." "Humph. You're just fooling around, Qing." Zhuo Dequan snorted and coldly said, "If this surname Tang had no relationship with the Fukang province's Huang family, I naturally would have welcomed them to stay here. But he knows the Huang family's patriarch. Who can guarantee that he's not in cahoots with the Huang, huh? You bringing him over is already a grave mistake. If he is to stay here and then informs the Huang family's people, you can expect that we'll meet our tragic end here." Zhuo Qing's face looked vacant for a moment but then shook her head. "No. There's no way Divine Dr. Tang would help the Huang to deal with us." "There's no knowing what's in a man's heart," sneered Zhuo Dequan. "Who knows what he really thinks? Besides, don't tell me you didn't notice that something is fishy? He's a dignified young divine doctor in China, as well as the owner of the magnificent Tang Corporation. With all that, why did he enter Thailand illegally?" Chapter 979, His Purpose. The series of questions from her father made Zhuo Qing simply stumped, both speechless and dumbfounded. She hadn't thought about any of it back when she was sailing at sea, for safety was all that was in her mind then. At this moment, however, she finally realized that Tang Xiu's purpose in coming to Bangkok was highly likely suspicious and problematic. Did he get into trouble in the mainland too? The thought popped up in her mind, but she denied it right away and shook her head. Tang Xiu was well known as the young divine doctor in China, the owner of the magnificent Tang Corporation, as well as someone who had a deep relationship with the Huang from the Fukang province. Who was possibly able to force him out and make him flee China? Therefore, there was only one possibility left that made him illegally enter Bangkok, which was absolutely related to this very big secret. And yet, what secret could it be? Countless thoughts swirled inside Zhuo Qing's mind, but still, she couldn't find any answer at all. It wasn't until her father patted her on the shoulder did she finally give up on thinking about it. "All right, don't think about it first. Just have a shower and rest well," whispered Zhuo Dequan after he retracted back his eyes from the direction where Tang Xiu and his men left from. Zhuo Qing nodded without a word, no longer blaming her father for refusing Tang Xiu to stay in his place. She was weary and sleepy right now. She had practically exhausted her spirit just on the journey to leave for Bangkok in such a rush. She really needed to take a hot bath, have a meal, and then take a good rest. Ring, ring, ring. Just as Zhuo Dequan took his daughter and 2 grandsons into the European-style building, his mobile phone rang. He took out his cell phone and picked up the call as the voice of the security captain then reported, "Boss, Mr. Tang wants to borrow 2 cars of ours. He said that it would help him with his work in Bangkok." Pondering for a moment, Zhou Dequan then said, "Give him 2 cars, but replace the license plates before you give them away. And do tell him about it." "Roger that, boss," respectfully replied the security captain. Outside the manor, the burly security captain put away his mobile phone and then spoke to Tang Xiu. "My men will take the 2 cars and they will be here immediately, Mr. Tang. But the car's license plates will be changed, so you need to pay attention to that." "I understand." Tang Xiu nodded. Shortly after, 2 black SUVs stopped in front of Tang Xiu. 2 men jumped out of the driver's seat and quickly handed the keys to the security captain. The latter then gave the keys to Tang Xiu and nodded, "I wish you all the best, and Godspeed, Mr. Tang." "Send my thanks to Mr. Zhou," said Tang Xiu. On the straight road in the suburbs, 2 black off-road cars quickly headed toward the downtown area. Singluan and Tang Xiu were sitting in the back seat of the second car, and the former spoke with a scowl on his face. "It was really unexpected. You've helped them so much, Mr. Tang, yet they didn't even want us to stay in their manor? What a loathsome attitude. I'll definitely teach him to taste regret once I've become the Dark Shaman clan's patriarch." "I understand where he's coming from and why he doesn't want us to stay, though," said Tang Xiu smilingly. As a cautious and meticulous man like Zhou Dequan, the worries that he has that I would join his enemies to strike him is understandable. The other point is that he holds suspicion about our purpose in coming to Bangkok. If I were in his shoes, there's no way I'd let strangers stay in my place either. Anyway, let's just forget it. Him being tolerant and giving us 2 cars is already a good thing, though." "Hey, I really don't get you, Mr. Tang. It's like your character is rather contradictory," sighed Singluan. "You're so heartless and ruthless against your enemies, yet you're so tolerant when facing this kind of situation. I have even seen you turn into a good person sometimes." "You mean I kinda have a variable temperament or something like that?" asked Tang Xiu with a smile.
"Yeah,"
Singluan nodded. "Well, the Chinese have an old adage that all men are naturally born with goodness and kindness at heart," said Tang Xiu with a light smile. "Everyone's conscience leans towards goodness, which is carved deep in the bottom of their hearts. The more one grows older, the better the ability and the more people with various characters and natures she or he has to face in life. Stretch your hand out to help those who are weak yet kind people, but be ruthless when facing powerful enemies before you. No matter how good your heart is, cruel people you will encounter are too many to count. There's also another saying in China that exterminating evil people can save countless good people from their torment." "If so, then are you a good man?" asked Singluan. "No, I'm not, and yet I'm not an evil man either." Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "Every man has their own set of codes, moral codes that serve as a scale to weigh their own actions. But there's one thing you must remember, Singluan, the reward is reaped after you sow kindness. Retribution will come for all the wicked deeds you've done. Don't ever bully the weak even though you've become the patriarch of your Dark Shaman clan later. You'll find that cultivating goodness in your mind and actions, as well as learning to help others, is a very interesting and enjoyable life in and of itself. Further, there's also an old saying in China that a man who is down usually becomes a target, for there will be others who'll take the opportunity to suppress those who suffer setbacks. When you have power and fall to wickedness, those who hate you because of your repression will rally up and jump out to haunt and destroy you once you lose your power someday. But any kindness you give to people will perhaps make those who remember your grace extend their helping hand when you're down." Singluan's eyes lit up with a pensive look within them. He fell into silence for a long while and then silently nodded. "I think I get what you mean, Mr. Tang." Tang Xiu patted his shoulder. Then, he looked at Tang Guang in the front seat, saying, "Quickly find somewhere for us to stay for some time. Do pay attention to conceal our tracks as well. If my guess is correct, Singguo must have invited some other forces to find Singluan's tracks and deal with him. It's very likely that he'll find the Dark Wind Organization and the godfather of Bangkok, Kanaja, for this purpose. Jin sure might be able to get us a safe house to stay at, boss, replied Tang Guang. Why do you say that? Asked Tang Xiu in surprise. As far as I know, he has been tasked with some missions in Thailand previously and he stayed here for quite some time, so he's familiar with the situation here, answered Tang Guang. Also, given his nature, he definitely has a safe place for himself here. Tang Xiu then took his cell phone out and dialed Jin Shu's number. After the latter picked up his call, he asked, "Where are you now, Jin Shu?" "We just arrived in Bangkok, boss." Jin Shu's voice came out of the phone. "We're now heading to a safe house where I used to stay in Bangkok. Would you like to join us, or do you have another intention in mind? Just tell me the address." "We'll catch up with you," said Tang Xiu. "Feather Palace Club in Don Wing District," replied Jin Shu. "That's it for now. I'll contact you again when we get there," said Tang Xiu. "Keep in mind to conceal your tracks and whereabouts, lest you expose yourself and all of us." Downtown Bangkok. In the wide Springforth Manor was a cluster of connected buildings. The interior was filled with lush vegetation and beautiful surroundings, with small bridges, rock gardens, and a small artificial lake, similar to the Lake Heart Pavilion that was built with an oriental architecture atmosphere. Wearing white casual attire, Kanaja was standing by the lake while holding a fishing rod and sitting quietly on the shore fishing. Accompanying him were two pretty girls who served him tea, whereas Songzon silently sat next to him reading a stack of documents. "I've read it, Godfather," said Songzon respectfully. "Since you're done reading it, then go to the club." Kanaja turned to look at him and calmly said, "You must stay low there and take care of the business for 3 years. You can then take over the Don Wing district as your site after this 3-year period is over." Songzon silently nodded and then said, "My loyalty is forever yours, Godfather. You've kept my life, and I'll do everything you want me to do. Just take care of some of the younger ones with a bright mind later, and avoid giving any important position to those who have obvious defects, lest they court trouble later, all right?" Said Kanaja as he sighed, "Hey, that Mr. Tang has too big a background. I've sent some men to China in secret just to investigate anything about him, yet there has been no news and none of them have returned. If my guess is correct, I'm afraid they are all already dead, hence why I killed those who know about that matter besides you. For the sake of keeping it a secret, don't let me down again, Songzon." The face of a young man appeared in Songzon's mind and he immediately shivered inwardly. Then he said respectfully, "I won't let you down, Godfather." At this time, a burly man leading more than a dozen people approached from afar. They were the dark shaman clansmen, while the burly young man who led them was Sinquo. "Kanaja." With an indifferent expression, Sinquo called out as he came to Kanaja's side. Kanaja turned his head and immediately put down the fishing rod in his hands upon seeing Sinquo. Then, he let out a smile and said,
Ah.
"It's you, young Master Sinquo. You're a rare guest. What wind blows you here to see me today? It's been a long time since I met your old man. Did he ask you to come here to call me over for a drink or something?" "He has been in seclusion as of recently, Kanaja," said Sinquo with a smile. "That's why he rarely contacts outsiders. I need your help, which is why I came to you this time." "What kind of help though?" asked Kanaja smilingly. "I won't ignore your plea as long as I can do it. We're friends, after all." Sinquo took out a few photos and handed them over to Kanaja, stating, "I want you to help me by mobilizing your men to find these people. They are probably not in Bangkok now, but I hope that your men can find them once they enter Bangkok and then pass the news to me." Kanaja took the photos. And dull light flashed in his eyes after he glanced at them. He was silent for a short moment and then slowly nodded. "This is just a minor matter. I'll inform you once I get the news." "I will trouble you then, Mr. Kan," nodded Sinquo. "Also, I'd like to invite you to have a few drinks after some issues have been dealt with." Kanaja then continued to engage in small talk for a while. After he watched Cinco and his men leave, he threw the photos to the ground and stamped on them as he sneered, "Humph. I, Kanaja, have been muddling along in this shit for many years. I know those who I can provoke and those who I can't afford to mess with. Your dark shaman clan is indeed very strong, but don't fucking expect me to help you for nothing and no reason at all. This whole fucking shit is your clan's shitty infighting, and you all even have that harbinger of death involved." Songzon picked up the photos and took a look at them. His complexion then changed after seeing them, and he said in a whisper, "Isn't this that Mr. Tang, Godfather?" Chapter 980, Favor. Now I get why Tang Xiu has a connection to those dark shaman clansmen. It turns out that he's going to assist Singluan in defeating Cinco, sneered Kanaja coldly. It seems there will be a good show coming up soon in Bangkok. I don't want to be involved in this shit, but it'd be great if I could get some profit out of it. Songzon's expression slightly shifted and he asked respectfully, "What exactly are you planning to do, Godfather?" "Spread out these photos to our underlings and tell them to keep their eyes on every part of Bangkok closely," said Kanaja. "Report to me at once when you find Tang Xiu and Singluan's traces. I can expect to get a surprise if I can take advantage of this situation." As much as he knew of Kanaja, Songzon was well aware of how resourceful and shrewd this dreadful man was. This guy would stop at nothing once he sniffed out a profit he could get from any situation. However, he had no idea which side Kanaja would give his help to and gain favors from, Cinco or Tang Xiu and Singluan. "What about me, Godfather? Shall I head to the club for the time being?" asked Songzon. He felt rather puzzled, yet intrigued at the same time. He also wanted to get involved in this matter, hoping to get benefits. Yet, he was afraid that the matter would be too big and he would just trap himself in a mess instead of getting any benefits. "Help me deal with this matter first," said Kanaja. "Once you find that Tang Xiu and Singluan are in Bangkok, contact me at once. Also, tell the boys to avoid any conflict with them. If they find you first, tell them that all of you are Kanaja's men and are under my orders." "Understood," replied Songzon as he turned and left. Dongwing District, Feather Palace Club. As Tang Xiu, Singluan, and the rest arrived, the club's manager took them to the innermost area of the club. To Tang Xiu's surprise, the Feather Palace Club turned out to be a clubhouse with various business establishments, the most popular ones being horsemanship and shooting, painting, a casino, and boxing halls. "Mr. Tang, this manager knows me, but your men told us to come here. Wouldn't it be too easy to expose our whereabouts?" asked Singluan in a whisper as he walked beside Tang Xiu. The question made Tang Xiu slightly frown, and he thought for a moment before replying, "Jing sure has always been cautious in dealing with things. I also have already told him to be discreet and keep our tracks in the dark. So I think this manager should be reliable." "This manager may be reliable, but the rest of the people in this club are not necessarily trustworthy," replied Singluan in a whisper. "As I recall, many people working for Kanaja often come here in their spare time. I had a clash with his underlings here once, and even though I didn't lose much, I wasn't able to get the upper hand either." Tang Xiu observed the surroundings and then said in a whisper, "I don't think anyone has discovered us. Just take a look around the route we took. Haven't you noticed it? The path is not the main one to the interior. This place is also surrounded by trees and is quite covert. Those who we've seen here are not ordinary patrons who have come here for recreation. They're obviously the security guards of this club." Singluan hadn't noticed what Tang Xiu just pointed out. He suddenly realized the situation after Tang Xiu's reminder, finally appeasing his restlessness. Deep in the club was an office inside a Western-style building. Surrounding it was a garden encaged in high walls that gave off a peculiar sense of grandeur. Outside the courtyard was a 5-meter-wide small river with a concrete road that led to a 7-plus-meter-wide courtyard gate. There, for cold and grim-looking middle-aged men in black uniforms and armed with submachine guns were standing guard. "Boss. Jean sure," Moo and their teams had been waiting outside the courtyard and immediately paced forward to greet Tang Xiu's group respectfully. The scene instantly made the faces of the 4 men standing guard on both sides of the courtyard gate change to a look of shock, including the middle-aged manager now wearing a look of incredulity. "You know the purpose of our trip and how we must keep it the dark, don't you?" questioned Tang Xiu lightly. "This Feather Palace Club has got all kinds of people, so is it really suitable for us to stay here?" "The Feather Palace Club is run by our headquarters, boss," said Jing respectfully. "It was established when I was in Bangkok to carry out my missions here. I rarely manage this club, so I gave it to Taylor to manage. He's a reliable and trustworthy guy. I've trained these 4 men since long ago and their loyalty to me is unquestionable." Tang Xiu nodded in response and he glanced at Taylor, the manager, as well as the 4 men. Then, he said, "We'll stop over and stay here since they are trustworthy." "All right, let's have some rest first. We'll move later tonight." "Mr. Tang, you said we're going to move tonight," asked Singluan hurriedly. "We're going to see the head branch of the Dark Wind organization in Bangkok." Tang Xiu raised his hand to interrupt him and lightly said, "We need some information, so we'll buy it from him. Our operation will be carried out after that." "All right. We'll follow your order." Singluan nodded. The interior decoration of the 3-story Western-style building was extraordinarily luxurious. There were 4 housekeepers managing the building, 1 man and 3 women. Jing also explained that only a select few people could come to the building, all of whom were their own. It was Tang Xiu's plan to help Singluan take over the patriarch seat of the Dark Shaman clan. The very reason was to obtain Demon Stone, so he immediately called him over after coming here. Inside the study, Tang En, wearing a black robe and a bronze mask, appeared in front of the crowd and personally served tea before coming out and standing guard silently. Tang Xiu drank a cup of tea and then initiated conversation. "Singluan, I need to know the specific details of your Dark Shaman clan, such as the forces under your clan and the armed forces under the control of your big brother. This information is very crucial since victory can only be in our grasp if you know what we have and the situation of our enemy. I reckon the Dark Wind organization has penetrated my clan deeply," said Singluan. "A member of this organization was found in an incident a few years ago, so it was necessary to buy intel from them about it. As for my brother, I have sent my men to carry out investigations on him many times, and I believe that he controls a lot more forces compared to what I've previously investigated." His answer made Tang Xiu ponder for a while. Then, he nodded and said, "Since we need to find out about how many forces our opponent has, then our first move is to buy the intel from the Dark Wind organization and compare them with yours. Also, the only suggestion I have is to remove Xingguo and his loyal men. But it's best to keep alive all the forces under the Dark Shaman clan as much as possible. After all, these forces will be yours to manage once you take over the patriarch seat of your clan." "You're right. The number 1 enemy is my big brother and his loyal dogs," said Singluan. "Yet still, I think we must guard against my father now." "I know that. Your old man is leaning toward your big brother, and thus you must carry out the worst plan," sighed Tang Xiu. "I'll still help you kill your big brother, but there's one thing I must know. Once we kill him, what will you do if your old man puts this account on my head?" Singluan's eyes overflowed with dull light. He never had considered this issue before. But after Tang Xiu mentioned it to him, he instantly realized that, given his father's character, such a possibility was indeed very likely to occur. At that time, his father probably would not kill him, but he'd definitely go after Tang Xiu. Furthermore, Tang Xiu himself was not a saint, and it was impossible for him to just sit still when his father was trying to kill him. When that time came, the death of his father by Tang Xiu's hands was inevitable. As he came to this conclusion, Singluan then immediately said, "Mr. Tang, if my father really goes against you due to hatred at that time, could you please spare him? If you can't, then just abolish his cultivation." I'm sure I'll be able to have him under control and won't bother you anymore in the future as long as he's crippled. It seems like this is the only option we have. Tang Xiu nodded. It was late at night. A few hazy figures arrived silently at the Bangkok branch of the Dark Wind organization. Their movements were so discreet that nobody was able to notice them even when they appeared outside of the branch supervisor's bedroom. Knock, knock. The knock on the room's door awakened Charlie from his sleep. The man instantly grabbed his pistol under the pillow and swiftly unlocked its safety lock. Charlie was always a very cautious and alert man despite being ordinarily timid. It was because of his overcautious and meticulous nature that he was able to climb up to his current position as the branch supervisor in Bangkok for the Dark Wind organization. Therefore, all of his subordinates were well aware of his habits. None of them would knock on his bedroom door late at night unless there was a huge issue to deal with. Even if something big happened, they would call him and ask to meet him on the phone first. Who is it? With a gun pointed at the door, Charlie asked with palpable murderous intent. His voice was so loud that the Dark Wind organization's martial arts experts who were responsible for the security and protection around him realized that an intruder had infiltrated this place, causing them to rush over to his room. Tang Xiu, Singluan, Mo Ao, and Tang Guang stood outside the room, surrounded by strong men training guns at them. Tang Xiu let out a smile and then said, "Well, I took the liberty for this night visit, Mr. Charlie. I hope you're not angry. But there's nothing to worry about, as I want to strike a big deal with your Dark Wind agency." "Who are you?" asked Charlie away behind the door. Tang Xiu's group of 4 were all wearing bronze masks in order to not reveal their identity. Upon hearing Charlie's question, Tang Xiu lightly smiled and said, "It's rather inconvenient to expose our identity, Mr. Charlie, let alone that there's no need for you to know who we are. I just told you that I want to strike a big deal and buy information from you, didn't I? You just need to give us the intel I need and I'll pay you enough for it." Charlie was silent for a while and then shouted, "Hey, Yale. Are you here?" One of the big guys that surrounded Tang Xiu's group replied in a deep voice, "We got them under control, Sir Charlie." "Don't worry." Only then did Charlie feel relieved. Yet after he came to the door, he still carefully opened it with his gun first to peep outside, only feeling fully relaxed after seeing the scene outside.